prove it, but faith. I can't explain it, but my faith has given me peace. I'm a Christian with $100 million vision. Can nobody box me and say that's a contradiction? Goal driven, God just blessed me with the ambition. Look up when there is, he rests the definition. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a special day today. It is a special day because of what we're doing today. This is one of them days where I've never actually done this on the Elevation podcast before. So it's gonna be a cool conversation between me and three men as we talk about the current situation that has happened in the African American community. That's going to be a cool conversation. But an Elevation podcast is about elevating your mind, elevating your just the place that you are in the world. And so we're gonna end this conversation on a good note. But I really want to have this conversation with you guys. This is the Elevation Podcast. You can check me here, www.ShawnRiff-Raff.com. This is the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. Let's go. King. Royalty, stand up, brand up, fam up, hand out, no way, hands up, know what, name that, it's mine, claim that, it's time, message, we shine, above all, the decline, the darkness cannot last, the shadow of my past, before I gain knowledge of heritage I have, the bloodline that I share, most powerful out here, the mover of mountains is who I am touting, the richest among us is who I'm, the sun up, from sundown, the sun up, that's how I then come up, position is just mine, the favor in due time, can't have it, man, you lying, the powerless, you trying, enemy beneath me, there's nothing to teach me, the people receive me, cause my God complete me, and my God does keep me, and my God they free me, and my God redeem me, and my God relieve me, king is the million, crown me, I am winning my position, God's giving, God's in it, God's chosen king. Everybody, welcome to the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. I am here with three great men. We're going to have a great conversation today. We had some things happen in the African American community. We're talking about the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. And that is a very important conversation to have, and to have a very important conversation. And I don't normally have these types of conversations on the Elevation Podcast, so this is kind of new for me. But I brought some people on that I feel like have a voice to say something. Everyone's saying something a little bit different. But for me, it's some cool cats we have here. Yes, I just said the word cats. We'll start off with my man Russ Shanks. He is a hip-hop artist, a Christian hip-hop artist from the Baltimore area. He is joining us here. He always has a good thing to say about what's happening in the African American community, along with us in our Christian faith and our Christian walk. So he's definitely a relevant voice here in these here times. I have my man Jeff Tyler on the bottom here. Jeff Tyler is the CEO of Good Men Do Exist, and he is a good force out here in the community about bringing awareness to what it is to the men out here in the community. He does a lot of stuff in the community and a lot of events. I'm going to let him talk to you about that himself. And I have my man here, Matt Anderson, who me and Matt go way back. If y'all haven't seen the Elevation Podcast that we did before, me and Matt go way back. He has been a great voice in radio, and he is into film right now. He is in the ministry, and he is into a whole bunch of stuff. What's up, guys?
What's happening? Hey, what's going on, bro?
Well, what's up, man?
What's happening?
I want to start this conversation talking about the events that happened. Obviously, we know that on February 23rd, a man was killed in Georgia. His name is Ahmaud Arbery. First accounts was that he was killed jogging. So he was out for a usual jog, something that, according to his family, he did regularly. I want to start First of all, my assumption is that I want to get everybody's feelings about the situation. I want to start with Matt. I want to get your feelings about the situation when you first saw it. How did that affect you?
Well, my first thought was not again.
Yeah.
I was like, not again. And we could see it on video. Now, we really don't know what happened in those few minutes before that. We know what happened right after that. The young man died. But for me, it was just not again. That was my first reaction. Then I started thinking, at first I was like, wait a minute, somebody actually videotaped this. Somebody actually was following the car and trying to get this on camera. They didn't run. The average person's reaction when you hear gunshots is to go the other way. He was like pulling up on him like, hey, let me get this. So that to me caught me by surprise as well. In my first take, what little bit I could see in that 10 or 15 second video was it looked like the young man, I would have done the same thing. Somebody pull a gun on me, I'm trying to grab the gun because you can't outrun a shotgun. So you better off trying to grab him and get a hold of it. Now, I don't know all the details. They talking about he was jogging, and there's other video that came out that said he went into a house under construction in the area. A later report came out today, as a matter of fact. I read something that a black police officer posted, and he said that the young man didn't commit any kind of felony. He walked into this property. There's video of this. He's walked into this property under construction. He walks around, looks around, and 3 minutes literally, and he leaves. Nobody told him to leave, and he went back on his job. So that's the latest report. But my initial reaction was not again.
Definitely. I think that is, I think every time something like this happens, whether or not, it's always like, not again. How many times? What about you, Jeff? From when you first saw the really, I first heard about this scenario on Roland Martin's show. And what about you, Jeff? When you first heard of this, what was your feelings? What was your takeaway from it?
When I first heard about it and saw the video, I was angry. I was very angry, and my response is, okay, we are past fed up. I am past fed up with seeing Black men hunted, killed, marginalized. There were so many different emotions that came to me at the moment. And it's interesting in watching the video, these killers, they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly what they were doing. It was very intentional. Ahmaud was pursued. And it's interesting, even as I looked at the evidence and looked at the news reports, what came out is that you had one of the gentlemen, or one of the guys, he was a former officer. That he's a former officer, a retired officer. He was not even active duty, but yet he was being active at that moment. But you're not even active duty, and you have your son with you on top of that. And so what came to me is the interesting thing is that I believe that there are two life-altering experiences that Blacks in America have gone through. One is the day that you knew you were Black, and two, the day that you knew that it was a problem. Exactly. And interestingly, W.E.B. Du Bois, he wrote in The Souls of Black Folk, a great work that I believe every person should read. He wrote about how Blacks exist with a double consciousness. And that double consciousness is basically two things. It's the fight to have dignity, honor, and self-respect, and an awareness of how you're perceived in white America. And so when all of this stuff, I began just doing some reading, doing some research, and seeing that there's a reality that men have to live with, that Black men have to live with, that even in this country, that a lot of races don't have to live with. And it's not saying that one is better than the other. It's the fact that if you look at the history of everything that we've endured and everything that we've gone through, there has to be an awareness that there is awareness. Then there has to be an accountability. There has to be an acceptance that there is a problem, and there has to be action. So when I looked at that, I said, there's just a time out for speeches. There's a time out for just, hey, let's do this, let's do that. There comes a point as even Martin Luther King would say, where people just really get fed up. And I believe we've been past that point.
Absolutely. Let me chime over here to Russ. Russ, when you first heard about this scenario, you know, when this scenario first came to you, you know, what was the feeling that you got when you heard about this particular scenario?
I'm in unity with Matt and Jeff with their feelings, but also I want to add that because we've seen this episode before.
Yeah.
With I called it was the George Zimmerman syndrome, what these men suffered from. You know, they saw someone running that didn't look familiar, and they used the same excuse George Zimmerman made, was that there have been a string of burglaries in our neighborhood. So this black dude that just happened to be running through, and for Trayvon Martin's sake, this black young man that just happened to have a hood on, just walking through the neighborhood, had to be responsible somehow, because of course it couldn't be one of us. So let's go get him. So they play vigilante, and I don't think they intended on the young man being killed. But when you chase someone in a pickup truck with a shotgun hanging out of the window, what do you expect the person to do? So this is the problem that I have, is that that I've been in conversations with folks about this, and people that look like us, I feel like their way of thinking, they're thinking the way that white people think they should. Like, they're thinking like, I'm gonna think like this so the white people don't get mad with me. So they call Mr. Arbery a thief. They said, of course he was a thief. You see what he had on? I looked at the video. He had on shorts and a t-shirt. I work out in shorts and t-shirts all the time. I mean, I might not have the Nike brand or the Under Armour brand on it, but I work out in shorts and t-shirts all the time. And he's running in broad daylight. He didn't have any stolen items on his person. So my thing is, how do you assume that he's a thief just because the white people said that he was? So you just take their side automatically because we know that white people always tell the truth? Like, really? So when I heard those comments, it really got to me, because I'm thinking, like, this could have been any one of us four, or, you know, you see my kids in the background. This could have been any one of my two kids, my two boys.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I don't care what side of the fence you on. This is not really a black and white issue. This is an issue that when I say black and white, meaning it doesn't matter what side you take, it's wrong. It doesn't matter what race you are. What I saw was just completely wrong, period. So if a group of black kids chased down a white guy, I would have said those kids were wrong. You know, so in this same situation, we have to look at it in those same eyes, like, regardless of what race each individual was, to take a life like that, to chase that young man down in a pickup truck, of all things, which is reminiscent of the lynchings. You know, that's how the lynchings kind of started, like when the people started driving those little old-timey pickup trucks, chasing niggers through the dirt roads and all of that. Like, that's how that stuff started. And it's like that, all that was reminiscent of that same situation. So I can only imagine the fear that Mr. Arbery felt at the time. And, you know, it was fight or flight for him. So he did what he figured he needed to do. And of course they twisted it, saying that he viciously attacked the younger McMichael boy. And it's like, how can you viciously attack somebody that's holding a shotgun? Like, you know, either I'm trying to grab the shotgun away from you, or at least get it to the point where when I take off running, you can't get yourself together enough to shoot me in the back. So that's what I saw. And now the individual who recorded the video, and it's funny that the incident was recorded. Like, how did this guy know that this was about to happen? You know, so now he's fearing for his life, because, you know, he found himself as considered a third party in this situation. And, you know, and I really believe that the video was taken so they can show it to their friends later. but they didn't intend on killing young Aubrey. What they wanted to do was arrest him and say, look what I did, Jimmy Bob. I arrested this black man who was running through our neighborhood, and show it to all their friends at the barbecue. But since he was killed, you know, they wanted to bury it. But thank God it was revealed.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? So when I first saw, I don't know if you guys have gotten the opportunity to read the initial. There was a news article that came out on the 28th of February about the scenario in Georgia, in the city that they were in Georgia. And the initial reading of the news article, at the bottom of it, it began to talk about Aubrey's past. It began to talk about, some little theft thing that he had a couple of years ago, and then some situation about him carrying a firearm to a basketball game.
Yeah.
And so, where do you think, and anybody can chime in on this, where do you think that comes from? Like, why is it that Black people are considered like the Black people who are killed go on trial? And I noticed that like the victim, the victim is normally responsible when it comes down to Black people. And I noticed that within pretty much consistent or across the board in all of the ways that all of these things, whether or not the Black person was guilty or innocent of whatever he was being charged with, it always comes his history is bop 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 bop. Where do you think? Where do you guys think that particular? Where does that come from? Why do we do that?
I would be careful. That was the first thing I would say. When I first heard not only the Ahmaud Arbery story, but also the Shawn Reed story in Indianapolis, young man who was FaceTime living himself, running from the police, the 25-minute video of him just, it's funny, Boone Gang, he looked just like the Boone Gang dude, cracking jokes, it's funny, come get me, and he jumps out the car, F you police, and next thing you know, he gets shot dead. Immediately thereafter, yes, it's a sad situation. There's two young African-American men, but I started seeing posts with both of these guys' pictures right next to each other. And to me, it's almost like comparing the guy in Sacramento, Stephon Clark, and what was the brother down in Texas who got shot by the police officer in his own house. You can't compare those two cases other than the fact that they're young Black men. One dude running from the police, other dude sitting in his house chilling, eating snacks, and he gets killed by a police officer. In this case, is a guy running down the street jogging, and another guy who's running from the police in the middle of a crime. Now they're both tragic. I'll pray for their families. I'm sad for their families. Neither one of these young men should be dead.
Yeah.
But immediately what they do, guilt by association. So you start seeing the parallel put out there. Working in media for so many years, I've seen this thing behind the scenes where folks will try to slant stuff. Look at the headlines. You see these guys walking up on with firearms who want the quarantine to end. You get all these dudes with masks on and Confederate flags and long arms going up to Capitol buildings in several states around the United States.
Absolutely.
And they carrying all these guns and being menacing. But you do that with the Black Panther Party. You get a bunch of brothers out who wearing black berets and black leather jackets holding AR-15s and see what happens.
Right.
It's the same thing. So guilt by association is one thing that they try to do. Second thing is historically, us as Black folks, our skin is scary. One of my theories is fear of a Black planet. If you want to look at a biological, sociological, cultural view of this thing, globally, people of European descent are the minority, globally. In the United States of America, yes, people of European descent are the majority, but reports have it that within the next 15 to 20 years, there'll be a minority. Black and brown people will begin to outnumber them.
In this country.
Which will pretty much make the rest of the world. Right. So the challenge is this, is with that kind of fear, you're thinking, okay, biologically, if every Black man had sex with nothing but white women from now on, they would literally go away. Meaning people of European descent would disappear within one generation. So some of those folks, in my view, are afraid, they have a fear of a Black planet. So they're like doing
Right.
what we got to do. So we got to demonize, we got to scrutinize, we got to marginalize, we got to whatever kind of eyes we can to make them seem scary and continue to be the other. It's their hair, it's their skin, it's their walk, it's their language. They're menacing. So we're automatically scary. When in fact, if you look at the history of the country, we're the ones who were brutally dragged here.
Absolutely.
You know, raped, kidnapped. I mean, look at our skin tones. None of us look like we fresh out of Nigeria. I mean, there's obviously something happened in our bloodlines to get us to this level of skin tone and complexion and so forth. So to say that they want to get us to feel a certain way, it's all a psychological profile. And my last point is this, is we got to be careful of getting caught up in the emotionalism, because emotionalism can make us make bad decisions. I hear people say, "I'm mad, I'm sick and tired, let's get guns." What you gonna do? You can't outshoot them. And if we can't even agree on a football game, we can't agree on a favorite rap song. We're too busy talking about ourselves. And I know at some point in this conversation, we'll talk about that. If we can't love ourselves, how can we love somebody else who looks just like us? First time I ever had a gun pulled on me was by a black man. Second time I had a gun pulled on me was a black man. So first time I had a knife pulled on me was a black man. So I could go down the list of these kinds of things, and I ain't mad at them. My point is, oftentimes they hate someone who looks just like them, and there's a self-hate that's a part of this thing. So those are my thoughts on it, man.
But can I chime in real quick?
Go ahead.
So just to add on to Matt's point, I also think that the reason why they bring up the past of the so-called victim is they're trying it in the court of public opinion as well before it gets to the court. So it's like you know, lawyers use that tactic. Like they try to find whatever dirt they can find on to take the credibility away from the person that they're going up against.
Right.
So in this instance, they're putting stuff out there saying that Mr. Arbery had this in his past. The same thing with Trayvon Martin. They start showing pictures of him throwing up gang signs on his Facebook page. They kind of say, well, because he did this, that's the person that this other person killed or had to fight to, and he did it. He killed him to save his own life because this vicious dude who was a gang member or appears to be a gang member in these pictures or had brought a gun to a basketball game. He may have had that gun on him in this instance. So, it was self-defense.
Yeah.
So, and we get caught up in that because every time something hits the internet, especially social media, we take it as gospel the moment it hits. It's like when people start putting out these fake celebrity deaths, we like, oh, I didn't know he died and everything. Then you find out it's fake after like 3 days after you did your own research, but your initial thought is that you believe it. And then when Kobe dies, nobody believes it. Everybody thinks it's fake, right? So it's like, and that's the problem with this public opinion thing, is that everybody weighs in except for those who are supposed to weigh in, who makes the decision. Like they brought his best, supposedly Aubrey's best friend to talk about it, and he had some crazy things to say. And I'm thinking, like, where were these people when he was out jogging? Where was his best friend? And things like that. Like when all this was going on, Ruth, who killed those 9 souls in that church, had a black friend that said that Ruth wasn't racist. It's like, okay, he might not have been racist around you, but apparently there was something going on for him to shoot 9 people in the church that were all black. He was angry at somebody. So at the end of the day, we have to kind of like close our ears and eyes to certain things and just focus on the facts and focus on what we see. And what I saw in that troubling video was a young man trying to get away from a pickup truck that was following him, that stopped in front of him. He tried to circle around. Young man got out the truck with his gun and approached him, and he grabbed the gun trying to get away. If they had just stayed home and called the police, if they thought he was a crime suspect, they should have just stayed home, called the police, let the police handle it. He probably would still be alive today. But they acted because they wanted to be heroes, and now they're suspects in the murder case.
Man, I definitely feel you on that. And one of the things that Hold up, chime in, Jeff, before I say my next.
No problem. And initially, when we look at the Arbery case, initially the McMichaels, they claimed that there were a string of burglaries in the area. However, on record, none of that's true. None of that was true. It was proven to be false. And initially they were following him and wanted to, and asked him to stop, and told him to stop. They wanted to have a conversation. Ahmaud didn't want to do that because the McMichaels felt that they had the authority to stop anybody that they wanted. He kept jogging. They keep pursuing him and eventually block him off. And to me, it also comes down to these two words also when we see the smear campaigns done against Black men. Mudslinging, we see a lot of the past history coming up. Two words ring in my head, and that's white privilege. You have a lot of privilege that has gone on, and not saying that every person who's white is evil or wrong. No, not at all. But the racism that we see in this country and what we see in a lot of what we see in the media is so systemic. It has layers to it. And so there's so many layers to it. It runs deep, and it has for years, which is why we see people who actually, why we see officers who are retired or not active have the authority or feel like they have the authority to be able to get away with and do things like this and not be held accountable for it. They sat at home for 2 months, not arrested at all. And so my thoughts are that, first of all, we have to admit that there is a problem. Everyone has to admit that there is an issue and accept that a problem does exist. Because what happens is when conversations like this happen, you hear that could have happened to anybody. All races, can get profiled. That could happen to anybody. Yes. What are you talking about? It doesn't matter. And so when you have that, there is a shifting that happens, the shifting of the blame. There is a refusal to acknowledge the problem. You have what I call ignorance, and you also have willful ignorance as well. Where there's a refusal to acknowledge that the history in this country is systemically, occupationally, it's been hard for people of color.
Yeah. And
we do have a responsibility to work hard, to accept our responsibility where we can, instill character, instill dignity in our children. But we also have a reality that we have to deal with that's not the same reality as everyone else. So
it's funny.
Parts of it.
I got you. So what's funny, and I was thinking about this earlier. For those of us who have sons. And back in the day, but when I was talking to my son, my son has blatantly asked me before. So basically, during the Trayvon Martin time and during all of that stuff is, if I know police is going to harm me, should I run? Or if I feel like the police will harm me, should I run? So my answer was always, live. My answer, was live to tell the story, basically. And so, basically saying that live, make it out of the scenario. So if it's, comply, if it's whatever it takes, live to tell the story. And I think about this particular scenario, and I'm like, if my son would have asked me, he hasn't, because he, at this point of his life, he ain't. But my son was to ask me, should I stop for a random white man and his son in the truck? My answer would be like, absolutely not. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's one thing we're talking about. It's one thing if we're talking about police, how should we handle police? There's another thing we're talking about random people, a former police officer. He wasn't a former police officer like he just retired, because he just retired last year. He didn't retire from the police department last year. He retired from being an assistant DA last year, which he was 20 years into that, which means he wasn't a police officer for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So he wasn't a retired law enforcement officer. He was a public servant, whatever. And so what is it that we are, going to, tell our, how do we approach our sons in this, in this particular kind of moment where it's like, we didn't even, because when we were talking, we talk about Trayvon Martin, another one that really, it was a police officer involved shooting, but it has rubbed me totally the wrong way is Castile, Philando Castile. And I'll tell you why, because it tells you, because the man did nothing, right? He did nothing. He simply told the officer what was his legal obligation to tell the officer that he had a legal firearm in the car. Like, that was his legal obligation. That's the law. You have to tell the officer comes to the car, you have to tell him that's the law. But it's like, so he did everything right, yet he's, he still got killed. Not only just killed, but killed in front of his kid and his girl. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I guess this pushed me to my own, the real point of this. How exactly do we teach our sons their value? Not only their value. Let's start there. How do we teach our sons their value? How do we teach the next generation, our sons or pseudo sons, their value?
I can chime in on that. If you look back to the 1920s, 30s, 40s,
sure.
Harlem Renaissance, around that time, when people were wearing shirts and ties, when they went to the mall or a store, when they went out to eat, kids even had shirts and ties on, slacks on. There was a sense of dignity that was taught by the parents, meaning African-American parents. We taught our kids, our great-grandparents, taught our grandparents how to dress and how to have a certain level of dignity. The challenge that we have now today is a lot of the promotional efforts being promoted in the African-American community are done to us by us. For instance, if you look at the hip hop community and how do we learn how to let our pants sag? We learn it on a music video. How do we learn it's cool, I gotta have gold teeth and a pistol? How do I learn how to identify as being a tough guy and a bunch of tattoos on my face? Well, I got a bunch of tattoos. Where I learned it from my neighborhood in Oakland. That's where I learned it from. I've had them since I was 14. But my point is this. A lot of what we do to ourselves, but we were taught that. So to a great deal, it's not our fault because we were indoctrinated. We were put into an environment to be self-destructive. So it's oftentimes difficult. We learn our identity from our fathers. We learn our intimacy from our mothers. We learn how to be nice and nurturing. We learn our nature from our fathers. So if we don't have a father or a father figure in our lives, a positive father figure in our lives, we can't learn how to be a man unless we are around a man. So now being a man doesn't necessarily mean wearing a shirt and a tie and a suit and taking a briefcase to work and paying all the bills. That's not necessarily being a man. A man is being responsible. But another part is not letting your pants hang all down, and we don't want to see your butt crack. Another part of that is not being able to be dialectically pluralistic. What do I mean by that? I mean being able to talk hood, which I can. I go to the hood, I can talk hood all day long. It just comes out of me because it's part of who I am, is what I came up in. It's part of our African-American culture. I go to a boardroom, I don't talk hood. I'm going to be a little bit more articulate.
Right.
Spanish folks, when they're at home, they speak Spanish. When they go to work, they speak English, even though they may have an accent. Same thing for pretty much every other culture. There's home talk, and then there's boardroom talk. So we have to teach our young men, number one, a self-value. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you haven't been taught how to love yourself, then how can you love your neighbor? And if you look just like me and I don't love me, guess what? I'm afraid to kill myself, but I'm gonna kill you because you look just like me. So when I look in the mirror, I hate that guy I see. Guess what? I'm out in the street and I got a pistol now. This is my sense of power. And I've been marginalized. I can't get a job. I'm not respected in the community. The TV always tells me that I'm a criminal, that I'm a thug, that I'm a hoodlum, that I have no value. I can't get a job. I can't get a bank loan. I can't get a college loan. So guess what? I'm going to walk around with this gun. This makes me have power. And as many women as I can have, that makes me have power. 4 things right here. And I'm going to turn over the floor. 4 things that I've had to learn how to design my boundaries of who I am as a man. It took me a lot of years to figure this out. But 4 boundaries I have. Number 1, things that are non-negotiable no matter where I go. I'm not going to sell out my God. I'm not going to sell out my manhood. And when I say manhood, I'm a heterosexual male, period. I'm not disrespecting anybody else who makes other decisions in that regard. But I know how I was designed. I know who I am. I'm very clear on my God, my sexuality as a man. I'm also not going to sell out my women, which means my wife, my daughter, my mother, my sisters. I'm not going to disrespect Black women. So I'm not going to promote or be a part of something that's going to promote degradation to Black women. They not bitches, they not hoes. Pardon my French. Because guess what? If your mama is a bitch, that makes you a son of a bitch. That makes you an animal that needs a chain around your neck. So you're calling yourself an animal. And the 4th boundary is this, is I'm not going to sell out my people for no amount of money. And so a lot of people in music and in ministry and even in media create these environments and these images that cause us to think a certain way. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So when you see enough images of you being a thug, a pimp, getting a bunch of women, having cars, having a bunch of depreciable items that don't gain any kind of value, you spend all your money on cars and stuff and clothes and stuff that loses value as opposed to property and businesses, you figure that's value because we haven't learned value. There's a reason that people spend $3, $4, $5 million on a 30-second commercial in the Super Bowl. It's because people are being influenced by those images over and over and over again. There's value in images and music and messaging that goes into that. So when the music and the messaging is decadent and destructive, and we constantly ingest that, as a man thinketh in his heart, faith comes by what? Hearing. So if all you hear is destructive, bees and hoes, and I'm a thug and I'm a pimp and I'm moving that weight, and if that's all you hear, and you don't have a positive male role model in your life, and you don't know how to be a man, how are you going to teach your son how to be a man? You don't know how to be a man. So now you have a dysfunctional family, you have a dysfunctional wife or baby mama. So that in itself is disrespectful. When you call a woman a baby mama, not your child's mother, she a baby mama. What is that? Your cartoon character. So we have to, part of it is not these young men's faults. Part of it is our responsibility of men who know better to do better. And that's my thought. So any chance I get to talk to young men and say, hey man, you can do better and pour into their lives, I don't need you to wear a suit and a tie and carry a briefcase. I just need you to do better and take care of your kids and not be destructive to your community.
I want to chime in real quick because I want to challenge. I got to challenge. I want to challenge a thought process. So let's think back. All of us here are old enough to remember 1987 and the biggest rap song to come out that year, right? It was NWA, right? It was F the Police, biggest rap song to come out in 1987. Changed the entire culture of what rap music was till this day. But if we go back to 1978, is when the mid 1970s, when we start talking about redlining and loans and stuff like that, that started to happen, where they started to take effect of things that happened in the 1960s, when Black unemployment started going up. This is the late 60s, the 70s, when Black unemployment and all of that stuff started to go up. We realized that, because Matt, you said something very, very key, because you talk about selling out your own people. But we realized that the only way to wealth in this country was for Blacks was for us to figure it out on our own, because we were boxed out of what made other people wealthy. So Martin Luther King, even in the 60s, was talking about the grants and the loans that people were getting for land to be farmers, and for the different stuff that the government, which they will be subsidizing companies out, but they didn't do that for African Americans. And so what we did was we figured it out. You figured it out. So we figured out what made us profitable: drugs. Well, we figured out what made us profitable: rap music, music and drugs, and being an athlete, and all of these, these things which created our, sort of stigma of, and once that happened, we sort of, we found a way to make it by selling ourselves out, right? How at this point, how can we, because I do believe at this point things are different. I don't think I think they're different than they were, if in the 80s. And so I've seen, a different thing happen these days. How can we break away from what we did then? Right? Because rap music it wasn't, the creative part about rap music, the inception of what rap music is not what rap music is today, right? It has a process, but where it really blew up into a thing is when we realized that we can make money and a whole lot of it this way, because people are responding to this, right? And so it's always a complicated thing, because it's a complicated thing because the the balance between economics and the balance between economics and morality is so backwards in America, but that's American, right? So a lot of the stuff we see is because we live in America, right? And because the same people who oppressed us is the one we ask for stuff. The same people, it's like in the Bible and the Egyptians, if the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt and God delivered them from slavery, but they had to stay in Egypt under Pharaoh. You know what I'm saying? It's a weird dynamic of what happens here. So I said that to say it's a complex situation here for us as a young man, understanding that about, as a young man who may not understand why it is I am like this, or why it is I'm attracted to this, or why it is I want to carry guns, or why it is I do anything to come up, why it is, what is it about that? Because I think one of the things Brad said was really, really key about selling out yourself or your people or your family, or like, what can we say to young people or to say, hey, this is your path. Like, this is what this is your path. I know Matt, he said a lot. I want to hear from Russ and Jeff. What is it that, considering this is what has built you in the last, let's say 30 years, considering this is what has built you, where do we, how do I help value you? What can I say to you to help you value yourself higher than, because if we don't, we repeat. Like, if we don't, it won't be rap music next time, right? It'd be something equally as immoral and unethical that we use to come up.
I would definitely say that exposure is powerful. Exposure is key. Exposure creates options. There are a lot of young people in general, who have grown up and in attempting to live and become what they've seen in media, in mainstream media, in these rap videos, and just even around them, because they have not been exposed to better. They have not been exposed to know that, hey, there's something better than what you've been seeing. There's something better than what you've been experiencing. For example, and even in a lot of rap music, you have a lot of artists. You have some rappers, hip hop artists, who we would call the intellectuals, or who we would call, who we would place in different category, who don't just rap about guns, girls, the hood, sex, money. They're rappers, conscious rappers. That's the word I'm looking for. You have a lot, and then you have other artists that's all that they talk about, and sadly, the reason that's for a lot of them that's all that they talk about is because for many of them, this is the world that they've been exposed to. And they don't realize that there are cultures, countries, ways of living. There's a better way of living than the 4 blocks you've been exposed to, which, by the way, those blocks you don't even own, but you're determined to defend them. And I would say that the key is definitely exposure, because more is caught than taught. In other words, a lot of what our kids see, they see how we're living. They see what's before them. And the eyes are very powerful, because the eyes are filters through which we make decisions. And so I think, for example, I was really blessed to grow up in a home with both my mom and my dad, where they exposed me to what it meant to have character, what it meant to have integrity, what it meant to make wise choices, how to be wise with money, how to trust in God, how to do certain things. But interestingly, I'm passionate also about working with youth. I've been an assistant dean of students. I've been a teacher. I've worked in several group homes with young men who were in the system. And the young men that I've worked with and helped and had an opportunity to pour into have had histories and a past and exposure that was totally different from mine. And the good thing is that it was a lesson even for me as well. And it helped me. But I would say that definitely we just have to really start exposing our youth to what's better. And a big issue that we have is daddy deprivation. Daddy deprivation is a very big key. And you have different situations. There are men who are not married to the women that they had a child with, but they're still actively involved in that child's life and fathering that child. But I would definitely say there is an importance in growing up in a home and seeing a man before you know how to love a woman, know how to treat a woman, know how to respect her, know how to manage money, know how to, have that kind of character. And sadly, there are a lot of people who aren't exposed to that. So if they don't see that model before them, they don't know how to actually live that out, because they didn't see it. And we have to be able to teach our young men that being able to provide for your families goes much deeper than being able to physically protect and provide, because money doesn't buy character. Money cannot heal generational curses. That's important, but there has to be a character and something deeper. But I think we've sold our young men short because we've only exposed to them the physical aspect and haven't taught them what it means to navigate through a storm or situation that hits their family. 50 Cent, several years ago, it was an old interview, and I'll never forget it, that he had. And the interviewer asked him about his father. And he asked him, what was your father in your life? And he said no. And he asked him a critical question. He said, do you think that if your father was involved in your life, that your music would be the same and your success would be the same? 50 said no. So he's pretty much admitted that the very thing that's made him millions and that he's built music and a platform off of is the very thing that he was deprived of. And that was his pain, and he's made millions off of it. But if his father were involved, or actually in his life, then things would have been a little different, but then when the follow-up question was, would you want to get to know your father now? And he said, no, what's the point? And so you saw a totally different side of him. And now even in the media, we've seen it on Instagram, there are issues even with that he's having with his older son, who, they don't want to be involved in the son wants to be involved or wants to be in the life, but in 50's life, but there's some issues there. And so I think several things. Exposure. There has to also be, a willingness that we have to admit that there's a problem, and a willingness to show a different path to our youth.
Russ, chime in on that real quick. I want to hear from you what it is.
As a hip hop artist myself, I think that the important thing for most artists, they need to be honest with themselves and be honest with their fans, because it's weird to me that, like, within the last 15 years, we have all these drug dealers and womanizers who are making millions off of them. At least that's what they portray in their music. And then, you know, Rick Ross, who is, you know, supposed to be this kingpin, and I'm not hating on him, you know, whatever, do what you're doing. But then he was clowned for having a 9 to 5 as a correctional officer. And it's like, okay, so you're a clown, a person who worked a regular 9 to 5 and worked his way to the success that he's achieved now. But because he talks about being a kingpin, or he moved weight, he does this, every day he's hustling, y'all believe that and want that to be his truth. When I've always understood hip hop from the beginning as entertainment. It's these dudes are actors. You get it? So it's like maybe they've done some things, like, because I've done some things in my life, right? But in my music, I don't glorify it. So if the record executives are telling me, like Jeff said, to talk about my pain so I can make millions, yeah, I don't mind talking about my pain, but I'm not gonna make it so glorious that it'll make the young listener want to experience what I've experienced. Like, for example, what's his name? Young Jeezy came up. He's the snowman. He sell coke. He do this. He do. So everybody in the hood wanted to be the snowman. Everybody wanted to be Jeezy. But when Jeezy had a son, what is he doing? He putting his son through college with the money that we as a community gave to him to become rich. But since we want to be like Jeezy, want to live like Jeezy, how many cats in jail right now or dead trying to be like Jeezy? Was in his music, trying to live the lyrics that Jeezy spoke. So I would love for these hip hop artists to be honest, like to say, like, look, man, this is just entertainment. I'm not in the gang for real. Like, that's just what I talk. And I mean, even if it comes at the expense of losing fans, so what? I'd rather them lose fans than these fans lose their lives trying to live up to whatever expectations you put out in your music. 6ix9ine is another situation. He wanted to be gang, and like he get in court and starts ratting. He gets free. Now he back to no lesson learned. It's like he's right back at it. So it's like
millions of views.
Right, and it's like I'd rather my sons like put into my sons that, like, okay, this is fake and this is real, right? You know, you can listen to hip hop, but I need you to understand what you're hearing and know that this rapper is not living in the hood.
Right. Also, you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy on that point? Not to cut you off. You know what's crazy in that point is that the funny thing about the whole like culture is that everybody it's almost like we have this thought process that everything got to be real, like you got to, but it's not really real.
Not really
and then
real.
the moment that something happened, like a Nipsey or whatever, that something happened, then all of a sudden we gotta stop this, and it's like, yo, either we gotta be real or we gotta stop. Like, right. and it's like, and then there's like this point sometimes that you know, well, the movies can talk about this, which is true. Right? You know, they're violent movies, they're violent this, they're violent that, but for some reason, it's not separating from what's real and what's reality and what's fantasy, or reality, what's true, what's real and fiction. You know what I'm saying? And so for some reason, music has this way of not even just music. Our music has this way of somewhat projecting our reality, then turning back around and creating it too. So it's like, you know, I 100% believe that F the Police came from a real place, right? That was Rodney King. That was, you know, I 100% believe it came from a real place, right? But it projected to places where it didn't exist.
Right.
And then, you know what I'm saying? And for some reason, it's mirroring reality, but then projecting a new reality. But that doesn't happen with a lot of the movies and stuff that come out. Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't project, right? Like, I'm saying Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm just giving away my age, but but you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I used to watch Rambo. I used to watch all of that stuff coming up. it didn't make me into, Sylvester Stallone, you know what I'm saying? Like it didn't make me into that. But for some reason, when we watch these, or we take in this media, for us, it creates our reality. And it's like, what is it that we can't, where is it that we can't disconnect from what we're watching, and say that's fake, this is real, that's fake, this is real. Like not nobody, but 99.9% of rappers are broke, right? Yes, like the money they throw in, they may not have went and got it out the bank. You can just buy it. Like, you can just buy the money to throw. You know what I'm saying? Like that, all of that stuff. It's like 99.9% of rappers are broke, yet they portray that they're wealthy, and they portray do A, B, C, and D, and you get money. And you can do A, B, C, and D and still be broke. And why is it that no one has challenged the idea that A, B, C, and D actually don't make you money? That's just fake.
If I could chime in on that, man.
Sorry.
If I could chime in, just a
can I
quick
just
thought.
finish my last point real quick?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead, man.
So, and my to add on to what you just said, Riff, is that's why these reality shows are even worse than hip hop. Because now it's not just music videos. It's now we actually get to see these people live an everyday life, and all they do is fight. That's all they do. They get drunk and they fight. Baby mama drama. You sleeping with my man, and it's called love and hip hop. But where's the love? Where's the hip hop? There's none of it. But we see it. Our kids see it, and they go out and they hang with their friends. And they get in the fights that's just like the ones they see on these reality shows. They throw stuff at each other, but you never see anybody get arrested on these reality shows. You never see anybody get shot or killed. And that's the part, like you said, with F the police. Yeah, NWA can yell F the police from a stage, but if I live in Parkville and I yell F the police at a passing police car, they're gonna stop and they're gonna deal with me. So NWA can yell F the police from the stage and everybody jump up and down. But then again, when you leave that concert, you still have to live in the reality where if you yell F the police to a police officer, you run the risk of being dealt with. You see the reality shows, you see the fights on the reality shows and in the music videos, but no, if you try to sell weight, if you try to fight like these people fight or try to live like these folks live, there are real life consequences that they don't show you.
You go to jail.
You can die.
Right,
you can die. And then even when they show these rappers go to jail, they always holler, y'all held it down in the prison. Did you really? Like, I mean, who wants to go to jail and use that as a badge of honor? Like, I went to jail and I held it down. What? Like, somebody might have held you down and, but it's like, I don't want my sons to think that that's a badge of honor. Yeah. That's how we as Black people are supposed to act in society. I don't care what you see on television. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you the real. And the thing is that the game is already rigged against us already because of our skin color. But why do you want to make it worse by portraying this for the world to see? Why do you want the world to see? And that's why folks say they're scared of us. That's why people think that we are we're quick to anger because they see these girls fighting rich folk, man. These supposed to be rich people. So imagine how, they arguing about stuff that poor people don't even argue about.
Right.
And it's like, y'all got money. So, and y'all supposed to have class. So how do you think the people that are watching us, just regular folk walking the supermarket, think of us if they see that on television?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you hit it on the head, man. I think Brother Russ is dead on it, man. When you talk about, being able to counteract what our sons or the young men in our lives are seeing and hearing. If we're credible, consistent, and creative in the way that we tell them the truth over and over and over again. For instance, I remember years ago in the mid 90s, I guess it was, when Tupac was hot at the time. I Get Around was hot, and I met him, was hosting a hip hop show here in DC, working for a radio station. And I'm back behind stage and I'm supposed to host this thing. And it's literally the night before Poetic Justice comes out. And I go to meet him and I'm thinking, oh man, he from Oakland, man. One of the homies from the town came up. And so I go dap him up. Hey man, how you doing? I heard you smoking, blah, blah, blah. He said, no, I ain't smoking. Now, mind you, it's all in all the trade magazines. It's all in the magazine. He said to my face, I'm standing a foot away from him. I'm looking at him. I said, what? I said, okay.
First
So
of all, I want to bring to everyone's attention that Matt's a celebrity. Okay, because we don't have no Tupac stories. I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead, man.
Man,
I used to work with him in radio.
I was mad. I was brokenhearted. I was, man, what are you doing? And so he was, I'm just trying to small talk with the brother. Hey man, how you doing? I'm dapping him up. And next thing I know, he's like, no, I ain't from there. Yeah. So when you get up on the stage, just tell him about, Poetic Justice come out tomorrow with Janet Jackson. So I'm like, I got on stage. I was like, Tupac. That's all I said. And that's all I had for him. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a huge, in terms of his music, in terms of his storytelling ability, he's one of the best ever. But it taught me something in that moment. I said, wow, not everybody who portrays who you think they are in media, because there's a marketing campaign, there's imaging, there's branding behind it that goes into trying to create an image to get you to reach a specific audience, a specific demographic. Secondly, when you talk about NWA,
real quick, Matt, Tupac was in my French class when I was in high school.
Wow.
And
in Baltimore.
I went to Baltimore School for the Arts.
Right. See, there you go.
Wow.
He was in my French class. And
you're a celebrity too.
He was a geek. Like, he was not a thug at all.
Thank you.
So when I saw him in Juice,
or intelligent.
You know what I'm saying? But I was
firsthand. See.
But but I was glad that he made it. But then I saw his progression. And I was like, wow.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, talented.
Yeah,
but the point is about the illustrations and the examples and marketing. When you talk about NWA, F the Police, and literally, what was it the year before that? It was Public Enemy and Self-Destruction.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a huge hit.
Yeah.
But the industry said, wait a minute, y'all thinking too hard. Wait a minute. After Police, it was like Fear of a Black Planet. What was all of the Public Enemy songs were coming out?
Right.
It takes a nation of millions. So it was unifying. It made you think about Marcus Garvey. It made you think about H-Rap Brown. It made you think. And so they said, no, wait a minute now. So let's start getting into the music. What's the best way to teach a child their ABCs? You put it to music. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You put it to a melody, into a rhythm, into a cadence, and they start to remember it. So what do we do with music now? Whether it's positive or negative, you add you add a melody to it. And the one thing I will say is that we're formed in his image and shaped in his likeness. Oh my God. We're formed in his image and shaped in his likeness. If we're formed and then shaped has to do with like sculpting. And what does a sculptor do? A sculptor takes away all the unnecessary stuff until the masterpiece is discovered in that wood, clay, or whatever it is. We got to do that as fathers, as men who emulate it, and talk about all the stuff that we went through that was nonsense, that I had to pull off, that I had to take off. I'm working on a documentary now called The Gift of His Presence. It's on Black fatherhood. We got Gary Payton in it. We got Tracy Martin in it. Trayvon's dad is in it. We actually went inside San Quentin prison and interviewed a bunch of brothers called the Malachi dads, a bunch of Christian brothers who all of them are doing 20 years to life. All of them are doing a bunch of years. All of them are in there for some form of murder, at least one murder. And so I sat down and talked we did like 13 interviews with these guys. And the common thread that I heard is that they all didn't have a positive, consistent male role model in their life. In fact, we interviewed two guys, one of whose son he had not seen since he was 11 months old. He'd been in prison 21 years. His son came to jail in the same prison with him. He hadn't seen him since he was 11 months old.
That's crazy.
He found out that he was coming. He reconnected with his son. His son
was
still wilding out, and he got moved to another prison. Then we interviewed another cat who was he was about 23, 24 years old. He came into prison. He heard his grandfather was in there. We interviewed him and his grandfather, and they sat down next to each other. And we talked about how his grandfather influenced his father, who was absent in his life. And now he's taken after his grandfather in a life of crime in the same prison. Wow. So again, it's modeling, it's being an example of, it's being able to point out who is your superhero.
Yeah.
Here's one other quick thought is being able to recognize what is our kryptonite and what is our vibranium. What makes you strong and what makes you weak. Kryptonite is that thing that's gonna mess you up, whether it's women, drugs, anger, whatever it is, self-destruction, or is it studying in school? Is it learning how to get your credit score up and your interest rates down? We don't learn that. No one taught us how to build credit, because credit is our reputation in the hood. What is hood cred? It's reputation.
Right.
Credit is nothing but a hood, is reputation in business, or being able to buy a house or a car. So what do? We pay these astronomical interest rates. We don't know how to hire people because we can't start a business, so we can't get a business loan. So we don't know all of this stuff. Like me, I wasted my whole 20s trying to buy stuff that I couldn't afford, jacked up my credit, and then I took my whole 30s trying to fix it. So I didn't get it together to probably close to my 40s when I got it together. That's 20 years of wasted time where I was not able to build generational wealth, let alone teach anybody else about it. And I still ain't got it total together, but I'm a whole lot better than I was. My point is this: being able to have a model, whether you don't have a father in your house, find somebody who's your superhero. Find something, whether it's you on the internet, whether it's on TV. It can't be no brother from the block.
Right.
Tell me one senior citizen brother you know who been moving weight, slanging dope, squeezing pistols for 30 or 40 years. You can't name not one who's still in the game. They all either dead or in prison. You don't survive being a tough guy on the block. Nope. The real heroes are the guys who create businesses and multi-generational wealth. And if we talk about us hating ourselves, if we look at all these white folks doing what they do, God bless them. What about us? If we could come together and pool our resources and pool our reputations and pool our respect for one another, I think we can do a whole lot better. Instead of being mad, we're going to protest against the man. He ain't going to give us nothing.
Right.
We need to take it. We need to create it, and we need to develop it, and we need to share it with one another.
Yeah. You know, we have to be able to create, because one of the things I think which made NWA successful, right? It was because the money, there was self-destruction. There was all of the, the positive or thought-provoking music and rap music, which was what rap music was really built on. But the money was in the image that America wanted to see of blacks. America wanted to see a certain image of us, and they'll pay to see that image. And there has to be a difference between the American dream and the Black American dream, because the American dream sells each other out for money. Often sells each other out for money, often doesn't have the ethical bottom to what, how we get money, but then there should be the Black American dream. What does that mean? Because I think that we sell each other out. We'll sell each other out. We'll do whatever it takes to make it, because we live in a country in which that country is built on that exact principle. Right? Do whatever it takes to make it. We needed free labor. We got slaves. We needed land. We kill Indians or Native Americans. We do. It's like, do whatever it takes to make it sort of mentality. That's the country that we live in. And then if we repeat that same, if we repeat those same actions, we end up doing what you see us doing, which is selling ourselves out for, to make it in this particular country. And I think that if we have a different dream, a different dream, the African American dream is just not to make it as greatness. It's not just to make it is a spiritual peace, a spiritual alignment, to honor each other, to honor God, to honor our women, like Matt said, ourselves and our women. There has to be a different principle in which we live by. And to an extent, we have to somehow deny some of the things that we are taught as what is and what isn't success. Really, I think what Russ said was really, 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 really true. You got to be honest and factual. You're not rich. You know what I'm saying? And if you are rich, this is how you got rich. It didn't come because I was a pimp. They're not rich. It didn't come because I was a drug dealer. Most of them ain't rich. It didn't come because, what I'm saying, by the time you get rich doing drugs, you get locked up. You know what I'm saying? This by the time
where do we develop the value though? You're touching on it right there. You could have a bunch of money, just like Russ was talking about the reality shows. They got all this money. There's a lot of these folks are getting paid $15, $20, sometimes $40,000 per episode.
Per episode, yeah.
And they're not. What have they done before that? Most of them have never been famous. They're only famous for being famous.
Yep.
And what do? Be as ratchet as they possibly be. So they're going to continue to. So think about who really profits from it. It's just like the football team owners. The team owners make money. The networks make money. I mean, I will tell you, having sat at the tables before, man, I could have been a millionaire a long time ago had I violated one or more of those 4 pillars I talked about earlier. You know, had I decided, okay, I'm gonna grab my ankles, go ahead. You know, or I'm gonna sell out. I'm gonna be a pimp and I'm gonna dog these women. Or I'm gonna go ahead and sell out to black people, do that. Or I'm gonna say, nah, you know, the God is dead. I can do any of those things and make money literally overnight. I got fingers to show you people that I was peers with. Now are way up here now financially. But what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? We don't teach that to our peers, to our brothers and sisters. What is real value? Once you learn what real value is, because if you sell out your family, your women, yourself, your God for anything, you can't be trusted.
Right.
Exactly. And truth be told, even there's several things come to mind from all of this too. Even speaking on the love and hip hop, everybody is on there is not rich.
But that's true too.
I know for a fact all of them don't have money like that. And like Matt said, nobody knew who you were until you got on this reality show.
Right.
And sadly, even to the drama, the fighting, the going back and forth. Truth be told, they're doing that. A lot of them do that for more screen time, because the more screen time they get, the more exposure they get, the more they can come back and make more money. That's really what that's about. Because if you interview or talk to a lot of them behind the scenes, a lot of those beefs, a lot of them, they weren't even beefing with each other before. They didn't have each other before. So it goes back to what you were saying, Matt, about selling your soul out for $1 or doing $1. And a lot of those characters, those actors, they don't have anything else going for them except that show.
Right.
Not all of them have different streams. And so, and even when you talked about how every man needs a consistent father figure, a consistent male in their life, and know what their kryptonite is. When you mentioned David, Michelangelo created the David sculpture, which is very popular in Florence, Italy. You have that David sculpture. When Michelangelo created that David statue, he was asked, how did you do all of this? How did you create David? What did you see? Because originally it was just a big slab of marble. And he said, easy. Well, not necessarily easy, because it took a lot of time and effort to do that. He said, I just chipped away everything that was not David. So I believe that the purpose that father figures have for us as men, and that other men have for us, is that we can look up to, is to help us chip away everything that's not who we were created to be as men. Is to help us chip away character deficiency, chip away those things that can hinder us. But we have sold our brothers short because we've limited their manhood to a sense of false security. And we haven't truly shown them that as important as it is to be responsible, knowing how to fight and have physical weapons will not protect your family from generational curses. It won't show you how to protect your household and teach your son how to have character.
Yeah.
You know, and when we talk about being responsible, actually it starts with teaching. It starts with training. It's, getting the exposure that we need, getting around other men. And secondly, we need safe spaces, even like this one, where men can speak their piece in peace. Because every man needs another man to be vulnerable with and broken in front of without backlash. It's just reminding our sons also that every man that comes into your life, the positive men that come into your life, the men that father you don't have to be the men that birth you. They just have to be the men that love you. So that's even good. if they didn't physically birth you, that doesn't mean that they can't love you. I'm a product of that. My dad, whom I call dad, he didn't physically birth me, but he's been my dad since I was a baby. He stepped in our family and he took responsibility, and he's taught me how to be a man. And the word step was never used in my house. It was never. And so I think even with the media, part of, and I applaud you for bringing this together, Shawn, us having these kinds of conversations, because we don't hear men talk enough.
Right.
We're seen playing sports. We're seen when we're angry. We're seen when we're positive. We're seen doing all these different things.
Yeah.
But how many times have people actually seen us sit down and talk? I think of when Jay-Z released the 44 album, he did a whole 12-minute video segment interviewing men in the industry.
Yeah, about love.
manhood.
Yeah, about
I loved
it.
About love. That was brilliant to me.
Yeah, I loved it.
And Jay-Z, he's very smart, but that was brilliant. And if you listen to the stories of guys like Will Smith, Michael B. Jordan, he's interviewing all of them. And Will Smith, one thing he shared was that I didn't really grow up understanding. I had to learn what it meant to really love. When he saw different guys or talked to different guys on a corner, who were giving advice about relationships and dating, it was from a flawed perspective. When he heard these guys on the streets, because it's all a matter of exposure. Because exposure creates options. So we have to start somewhere.
Yeah. That definitely, when I've actually watched that video several times, because I can appreciate the vulnerability in that video. And yeah, like you guys said, these when you guys are talking about the reality shows and how they fight and behind the scenes, it's the same thing we've been talking about. It's the come up, right? And the truth be told,
to get clout, or
right?
They talk about trying to get clout today.
The truth be told, we never seen Jerry Springer fight.
No.
But we seen him host fights.
Right.
Like
he'll let everybody else fight.
Yeah, he didn't host it because that's what and they prep people. They prep people to fight on the show. You know what I'm saying? And that reality TV ain't really real. You know what I'm saying? I remember having this thought like a while ago. MTV the first reality show was the Real World, and nothing about the world that they created on that show was real. Right? it's like I ain't never lived in a house with 7 chicks, and like this is not real. But I think what everybody's saying here is really is just truth. We gotta stick to telling our sons truth. We gotta make sure that they can separate what's not real from what's real. We may not ever be able to change, huh?
Yeah, put our daughters in there too.
Yeah. We may not ever be able to change what the media portrays, but I can change how you feel about what you see with the people around it. Just by being factual and truthful with you and saying, being in the music industry myself and being a hip hop artist myself, albeit I was Christian, it's just not what you think it is as far as even, as far as, what you're looking up to, that's not really real. These are the things that are real, and this is the way that we get to it. And the most important thing in life is not how much money you get. It's, greatness is not about money at all. It's about, is what you do in the earth and how you, how you reflect, the good that you do in the earth is what matters in life. I want to go for any last. I want to go for last words. I'm gonna start with Russ. Give me your last thoughts before we get out of here. Just give me some last thoughts. Sum it up for me, Russ.
So, I think the bottom line is that we have to teach our children. We have to teach our children how to be disciplined. Not just in the house or not just when company's around, but even when we're not around. Because, my parents dealt with me when I did something wrong. And the thing is, my father used to say to me, I'm going to deal with you so the correctional officers or police don't have to. So, because they'll be worse. They don't love you like I do. So, and that's the same thing that I instill in my kids and my godchildren as well, is that, discipline is not a bad, now I'm not abusing you, but discipline teaches you responsibility. When you go out here and you act a fool, you got to take responsibility for the consequences that come with that. So the best thing is to don't go out there and act a fool. That way you have no consequences to suffer. Now, you won't have a criminal record for somebody to look back on even though you're unjustly killed by somebody. They won't have a criminal record to throw back in your face or in your family's face when you're trying to seek justice. So we have to teach our kids from birth that it's not cool to be out here acting like a butthole, you know, lack of a better word, like a butthole, and then thinking it's cool, and then you can come play the victim later on. No, you got to take responsibility. Be a responsible person. Act right. Treat people fairly, and that way that comes back to you the same way. Even if it doesn't, you can say that I did that. That it'll be totally on that person that's treating you unfairly. You can say I did the right thing. So just teach your kids about discipline and responsibility.
Matt, let me hear some last words from you, Matt.
Couple things, man. First off, man, I'm gonna say thank you, man. This really blessed me,
Definitely.
man. Talking with all the brothers, man, Russ and Jeff, and of course Shawn, man. This is awesome, man. I love this. We can do this all night. I would say first off, you have to model what it is that you expect from your sons or godsons or neighborhood sons, if you will, is to model it. And part of that modeling is showing them what you will do and what you won't do. And sometimes the best way, I remember when I used to run track, one of my coaches used to tell me back in when I ran cross country, my coach would tell me, it's all about getting the bad air out. Because, you know, you're always trying to catch my breath. He said, no, you're doing it backwards. He said, get the bad air out. Your body will automatically suck in the healthy air, the oxygen. And so I think part of it is it goes back to that David thing, the sculptor, and get rid of the stuff that doesn't really matter. And so, and sometimes, you know, one of the things I had to learn even with my own two sons and my daughter is to show them how to recover from mistakes. You know, show them that dad ain't perfect. And when I do make a mistake, how I recover. Mm-hmm. And that has spoke volumes to them to this day. I just became a grandfather 5 months ago. And now I got a grandson. And so now I got to think about him. My whole worldview now is all about legacy. What if I'm gone? It ain't about, you know, billboard signs or what I own. It's like, that's my legacy. You know, what is the character that his mom and my sons, when they have children, what is it that they're going to pour into their children? So one, showing them how to recover from mistakes, how to walk in integrity, not to be bought and paid for, to lose your soul because of stuff. Another piece is don't be afraid to get out of your environment. You know, I mean, just if you talk about Egypt, getting out of Egypt, a lot of times we get out of Egypt, Egypt is still in us. We get out the hood, but you got all this money. You can see it in professional athletes. You see it in recording artists. They got all this money, but they're in Beverly Hills or Bel Air, whatever they are, and they still acting like the hood because they never learn class. Class ain't got nothing to do with money or how well you articulate. Dignity is something on the inside. So teaching your children to value one another, to value themselves, to be a person who operates in dignity, and to tell them that they have worth, just like a life coach, just like your sports coaches. Your coaches always pushed you past yourself. Just like Russ said, he said, you know what, I'm gonna correct you because I love you. It's gonna hurt, but I'm gonna correct you. Correct them in love, but also model for them and show them that they have value, that they have worth. Tell them when they're wrong and make them feel the pain for it. But also tell them when they're right, because a lot of times we just correct, and we do it in love.
True.
We never tell them when they did right, and we got to be the best cheerleader for our sons and daughters as well.
Man, it's incredible. Jeff, man, I want you to give me your final thoughts. Take us home on your final thoughts, man.
Absolutely. We can't be a public success and a private failure. What we fail to deal with privately will come back to bite us publicly. In an interview in Hip Hop versus America, they used to have a series of interviews with hip hop artists about their music and the impact that it's had on culture. I won't forget when Michael Eric Dyson was having a conversation with T.I. And T.I. was defending the music and stating that, well, you all complain about my lyrics, but our music is a reflection of reality. It's a reflection of how America is. And if you all don't like it, maybe you need to check yourself. And Michael Eric Dyson told him, son, you're just showing us a window. Give us a mirror. You're just showing us you're just giving us a mirror. I need you to show us a window. Dr. King didn't just give us a mirror and a reflection of what we were. He gave us a window. He showed us a future to look forward to. Where do we go from here? Don't just become so acclimated and loving of the adoration, praise, and popularity and fame that you get. Take responsibility.
Absolutely.
And I want to challenge every person, every man, every woman to take responsibility for where you are. And when we're wrong, we should apologize, but we never should live an apologetic life. You know, legacy, it goes beyond dollars, buildings, mutual funds, assets. You know, we should be wise with our resources, and we should teach our children how to be wise with our resources. But prosperity won't last on a shaky foundation. And without character, without discipline and integrity, what you gain, you won't be able to maintain if it's not built on the right foundation.
Man, listen. I mean, I appreciate all of you. You know, I really appreciate you guys coming on here. The words that everyone had to share. The just, you know, definitely everybody just being able to share their truth and their reality, even though it started, you know, we started this conversation from, you know, from a horrific situation that happened in the culture. What I want to do every time I have a conversation about something that happens in the culture is end the conversation with some hope as to where we can go from here. And I feel like you guys really, really accomplished that tonight. I really appreciate all of you, you know, for coming on, each of you for coming on. And we're gonna continue this conversation. There's so much more to talk about, and I will definitely get you guys. We gotta do this. We gotta definitely do this one for sure again. For sure again, man. This is awesome. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate you so much.
King. Royalty, stand up, brand up, fam up, hand out, no way, hands up, know what, name that, it's mine, claim that, it's time, message, we shine, above all, the decline, the darkness cannot last, the shadow of my past, before I gain knowledge of heritage, I have the bloodline that I share, most powerful out here, the mover of mountains is who I am touting, the richest among us is who I'm the son of, from sundown to sun up, that's how I the come up, position is just mine, the favor in due time, can't have it, man, you lying, the powerless, you trying, enemy beneath me, there's nothing to teach me, the people receive me, cause my God complete me, and my God does keep me, and my God that free me, and my God redeem me, and my God relieve me, I'm king, since the million crown me, I am winning my position, God's giving, God's sending, God's choosing,